I'm the MD of BIMA. I want to just say a big thank you to the Club at the Ivy for hosting us yet again. It's just a really nice place to spend a couple of hours every morning. So before we kick off and I introduce our co-president of BIMA, who's going to host things today, I'm just going to talk to you a little bit about BIMA. I know most of you are members. For those that aren't, BIMA represents the UK tech and digital industry. Everything we do drives innovation and excellence across that industry. And we do it by building connections, community, delivering thought leadership, recognising excellence through BIMA 100, the awards, and driving a diverse digital future. And we run pretty much about 100 events similar to these throughout the year, throughout the UK. We're essentially a membership organisation. We have about 400 corporate members at the moment, and they cover everything from digital and creative agencies, brands and charities, technology companies, academia and startups. So it's a very broad church. A bit slow today. There we go. And I always just mention this because I think even though a lot of you might have known me for a while, some of you are not that familiar with the number of councils and think tanks that we have set up. We basically have 18 at the moment, ranging from UK-wide ones to emerging tech think tanks, to craft such as creative, client services, data, talent and diversity, and industry. And there's one missing off there. We have charities, startups and brands. And they are really there to lead the agenda for BIMA and decide what sort of thought leadership we're going to put out, what sort of events we're going to do. So if you're interested in getting involved or finding out more, just come and find me or Elise or anyone else who knows from BIMA and have a chat about it. And then just very briefly, a few things that are coming up. So we have a director's dinner on the 7th of March. Who's doing the director's dinner? Is it Pete? So we have the chair of our AI think tank leading the director's dinner. BIMA Awards are open for entries on the 8th of March. We've got quite a few new categories and stuff, so look out for it, take a look. On the 15th of March, this is part of our startup council. We are working with the Friday Club to present a Martech Showcase event, which is startups every marketer should work with. So really good if you've got an agency or brand. And then on the 28th of March is our next breakfast briefing, which is led by our Blockchain Council, which is demystifying blockchain. So I'm going to introduce Tarek.
Morning everyone. So to get things started, we thought we'd get a better sense of what you guys might be interested in today for this topic. So first of all, amongst you guys, how many of you produce digital products on behalf of your customers? Few of you. Okay. How many of you have created your own digital products? How many of you created ventures for your clients? Okay, that gives us a sense of where we're going. So we've got an interesting panel together today, and what we want to do is debate the future of the agency really, and part of that debate is really understanding where we stand when it comes to creating digital products, accelerators, venturing with our customers. It's a debate that we hotly debate all the time at Think, and I hope that you guys enjoy this discussion. So we'll welcome our speakers to the stage. If you wouldn't mind all coming and sitting down. Alex, if you want to. So the way we're going to do this is, first of all, I'm going to introduce Alex. So Alex Peckham is founder and CEO of ContentCal. This guy here, and this guy here. ContentCal is a social media and content management platform with over 500 customers globally. It started as a social media agency and then crossed the line into a product business and a SaaS model. So Alex is going to talk to us about that. And then we're really pleased to have Jen Hazelwood from RGA here. She's Executive Creative Director. And Jen's been for 15 years now within experience in the UK, Germany, Turkey and Australia, helping all sorts of very significant companies push their output forward. And has won a whole load of awards, which I won't list because it would take all morning. Then we've got Dan Moran, who is Managing Partner and Head of Product at Karmarama. Dan's been on that journey from NICE to Karmarama to Accenture, so he has lots of interesting experience to say, and he's also had an awful lot of experience working for the Times, with Diageo, Channel 5, and others. And then last but not least is my good friend Sid, who is really one of the forefathers of our industry. And Sid is chairman and founder of Clock, which is a very successful multi-award winning agency that's done some incredible work, but has also launched its own product called Swipe Station, which essentially is click and collect for beer at stadiums. Is that about right? Good. Okay, good. So we're going to kick off with Alex, who's going to give us 10 minutes of his story.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm Alex. Perfect. I run a business called ContentCal. We originally started as a social media agency, so we've gone through an absolutely mental journey as a company over the last 4 years, and it's taken quite a long time in my world to get to where we are, I think. And ContentCal is now on an incredibly exciting trajectory where we are winning business left, right and centre, which is fundamentally selling to SMEs. We've had £2.2 million of private funding. We are raising a Series A later this year, opening offices in America, etc., etc. So we're on a really exciting trajectory, but it took a long time to get to this point, and you obviously don't know where the future holds. But flipping an agency into a fully fledged SaaS business is incredibly difficult. So I thought I'd share a few slides and a bit of sort of info about our story, and then just take questions from there, really. So to do this effectively, just I can talk through this anyway. I've talked about this so many times, but okay, cool. It's really hard to describe this narrative in this story without knowing who the kind of person driving the ship is, which is ultimately me at our company. So I'm an entrepreneur through and through. I sold SIM cards that I used to get for free online in my school playground and sell them for like 15 quid to my mates because I could get them from O2 and they were giving away 3 minutes and things like that before there was that thing. I used to still want to add cigars and sell them to people in the playground as well, which I'm not proud of, but I did do it. And at uni, I had a real job, sort of in a shop for, I don't know, like a month or something like that. I was like, I can't do this, basically. So I ended up starting, bizarrely, this thing called Cardiff Banter. So I went to Cardiff University, and it was effectively a bit of a spin-off of a Lab Bible concept where we would share banterous stories, and people would upload content to this website. It got loads of exciting traffic, and we would sell banner ads and things like that off the back of it, which did okay, but ultimately wasn't hugely successful. But I marketed it all through social media when I was 18, so 10 years ago now, and it taught me all the things you needed to know to run a business: how to build a website, how to do invoicing, how to get people on board, create a bit of viral buzz in a very small city, and go from there, really. I then effectively turned that into a social media agency from home, so I wanted to make money without having to do an awful lot from my bedroom instead of going to lectures, and I pitched a family friend of ours who runs a business called Procstore, which is still one of our biggest clients today, and they're a really exciting business. They sell movie memorabilia to people around the world, and I just basically said, I can grow your Facebook page to 1,000 likes, watch me do this, etc., etc. And I ended up basically running his social media whilst I was at uni, and I had reasonably good money just doing that, effectively like a freelancer really, and then got lots of other local clients in the area, and that kind of banter thing sort of spinned off into a social agency. I then actually went and got a real job, which was really important to this story, because I don't think you can start a really successful business unless you've had that real experience in market. And I ran Odeon Cinemas, is social media, literally doing the doing of running the Facebook pages and things like that. So in our industry, I have done all the jobs that are needed to build a good product, I believe, off the back of it. I have responded to Facebook comments, I have written copy for pages, I have then moved on to Sky, incredibly cringeworthy in my early days, really pushed myself in terms of personal PR, but moved to Sky just as they launched Now TV, which was their sort of competitor brand to Netflix, and at the age of 24 was given a budget of £1.5 million on social media to look after, which looking back was complete insanity. But it enabled me to learn a hell of a lot about customer acquisition costs, because if we work at Sky, they're very commercially focused. We had almost infinite resources to do any campaigns we ever wanted, and we built mini products, to be fair, attached to a lot of our campaigns. So I've always been that sort of entrepreneurial character. I think one thing that Sky taught me was that the corporate life was not for me, so kind of being in that corporate world was something I didn't want to do. So I ended up leaving and starting a social agency called ASTP at the age of 24. So growing that was interesting. So when you're very young, you have some business experience, obviously. Growing an agency, it relies on you selling yourself first and then getting enough money to then sell other people, building that skill set up. I did it basically from my house at first with my non-desk, if you like, which I didn't even have a proper tabletop thing about 4 years ago. So I really built it up from scratch, built a client base. Odeon became a client very quickly when I set up my agency, so we suddenly got a really cool flagship client to work with from the off. But effectively, the kind of spin-off into a product business was I had an agency that grew organically over a period of 4 years to about 15 people and a good revenue base. But in social media, without going into the boring details, there's a lot of administrational tasks and there's a lot of workflow which I knew could be automated somehow, some way. It just wasn't being done by the current product tools that were out there, so like Hootsuite and buffers and stuff like that. And if you're in a bigger business, and what I quickly learned, even if you're in a smaller business, visibility on social media marketing content across a company is really difficult to achieve, but really important because it's become this huge thing that businesses want to know a lot more about and have more control of internally. So that sort of scribble there and that slide is the original, like literally scribble for ContentCal. And I did that 4 years ago. And effectively, to kind of get this whole thing off the ground, I set up a separate business. So I had ASTP, which was our agency brand, and was running that full time. And set up a separate business called ContentCal. And I raised 150k from friends and family under a sort of government-friendly scheme where a lot of these investors get some of their money back from the government. And built a very, very ropey prototype of ContentCal as a completely separate sort of thing, sort of on my own. We got some sweat equity partners in terms of development. And it barely worked, but we started selling it to our agency clients. I started selling it to our sort of clients that we already had, and just to see if we could make any money, basically, and see if it was useful to them. And within 6 months, we generated about 50k's worth of sales, which I didn't expect. And Sky very quickly became a client of that business because it was kind of built off all the problems I'd seen at a sort of senior level with visibility and control around social and a big brand like that. So that was kind of fundamentally the thing for me when I realised we could make some money, and we sold it to our agency clients. Plus, we actually sold it into Sky, even though it was sort of a friendly deal. And I was like, okay, this is probably a thing now. I ended up then going and doing an accelerator. So if you're thinking about switching businesses or wanting to learn about SaaS or building a startup and haven't done it before, I would highly recommend doing an accelerator in general. So I did that in 2016, and I did it with ContentCal as the business, and then I was running a separate company as an agency. And the accelerator was a 3-month thing where you learn about startups effectively, so all the legals, all the sales methods, etc., raising money. And you get partnered with a mentor, and the idea is if that mentor likes your business, they will invest in it and help you raise more money later. So off the back of that, after my mentor very quickly sort of said, right, I get your idea, you've already made some money, and you've already got a semi-successful business growing on the side, I would like to invest in your business. And I spent the second half of 2016 then pitching to lots of other investors about ContentCal as a company. And our journey sort of cemented in 2016, where we raised £500,000 from angel investors, but we ended up actually merging the agency and the software business together as part of the deal. And that wasn't part of the plan, to be honest with you. My plan was to run the agency separately and run the software business separately. Very naively at a young age thinking you can do both, which you can't, I don't believe anyway. And so we ended up merging it and effectively kind of going on the journey from there. So the biggest challenges around that are, and I think that's sort of around coming out to the next bit, is what's the transformation like from that point? So from 2016 to now, we have effectively gone through a mini M&A, because when people join an agency business, and you try and spin it into a software company, you'd be amazed how passionate people are about, you may be not amazed, but I was amazed how passionate people are about what they've joined. So the people that have joined ASTP, this sort of 10-15 person agency, love the brand, love the atmosphere around it. And the 4 people we have working on ContentCal full time love the brand and love working on it. Trying to bring them together was like a mini explosion in our office over a period of a year. A lot of people ended up leaving because they didn't like the fact we were merging into a SaaS business, so our agency team got smaller and smaller, which is a huge challenge if you're trying to grow an exciting business, keep the morale up, and have all the exciting stories sharing on your own social media about your progress, but our team want to leave. So there's a huge amount of challenges around people, explaining why you're doing it if that's something you want to do, and kind of the reasons why you're doing it as a business, and then trying to bring the people that do get the transformation on the journey. So it's incredibly hard, but I think we got, so 2016, to the end of 2018, we ended up coming out of that journey and are now in a very exciting place. But it took 2 years to integrate that. So anyone thinking of switching or starting it separately, there's a hell of a lot of learnings in there I could share. What are the drivers for change? So these were some of the questions that were on the BIMA sort of list. High risk for high reward. Building a startup and a SaaS business when you get it going and when it actually starts acquiring customers quickly is incredibly rewarding, and the value of the revenue that you can acquire is enormous compared to running a services-based business. So if you're running a company and your vision is to exit that company at some point, which is sort of where I want to be at some point, not in the immediate future, but later down the line, the revenue that you generate in a successful SaaS company is normally, for every pound that you generate, you can get up to 10 back, even if you're loss-making, as long as a scale and a success and you can find the right buyer, etc. So high risk and high reward for me was the change in that I've seen people run agencies quite successfully. I met John Wilkins actually at Colorama, and even he said if you can do it, whilst you're kind of younger and flip your business around, do it, because the reward potentially will be higher if you get it really right, which is cool. When you're growing a SaaS business, it's generally more stable, I think, as well, in my experience anyway, from building an agency. So we have recurring revenues, we know exactly how much money we made this month, we have a very good handle on what our forecast will be next month and the month after and the month after. So once you get it right, and the period up to getting it right is incredibly unstable, but once you get it right, it becomes much more stable, much more quickly. And then the obvious thing, that scale is much easier to achieve. So we know that our market is very big. There's the next one. Secret to successful project. This is really tough actually. The secret to a successful product initiative is that my biggest thing is that people overestimate the demand for their idea for a very large software business. And I've done that before, to be fair, and I've seen a lot of people do it in my sort of circles of friendships. So you create a product, and because of the size of the market, you think it's going to be huge. But you haven't factored in the cost to reach that market. Are they actually willing to change? Is there dynamics of the business and the market changing in your favour? So there's a lot of stuff around that which I can share later in some Q&A, and features are really important in a product. Crucially, position on the agency software business and how the market's sort of changing, hugely confusing, hugely exciting, I think, actually, for anyone thinking about doing this. I think building a ad tech business or building an agency, I don't think there's actually been a better time to do either. I think clients are really looking for help in terms of growing, and we're being held down, so I don't want to talk too much, but I think the industry is changing really rapidly, and I think it's just incredibly exciting. The last thing I'll say about building a software company is that if you might meet the right characters along the way, from investors to advisors, there's a lot of people out there that can help you. So I think once you start doing it, it's just about reaching out and going on that journey and committing to it. But that's my story. Thank you very much. Cheers.
How old do you all feel now?
I used to do this when I was much younger, but even I started
I was young once. Cool. Well, that's I think that's a really great opener for the debate, actually, because what we've heard is a story of someone who's made a full transition from agency model to product business, and that might suit some of us if we're ready we've got a killer idea and we're ready to move into a model. But I think the debate we want to have today is also explore how we might merge or sort of have those two complementary models, and is it possible to maintain those models, and if it isn't possible, how can you get as close to it as possible? So I'm going to open up to our wider panel, and I'm going to actually start, if it's okay with you, by asking Jen how RGA, who are famed for their innovation and their partnership and innovation, tackle their view on how they develop their own IP or do so with their clients. We've got Stephanie White.
Hi, RGA is a company that works from agency to we do business transformation all the way to marketing. And I think what's interesting for RGA is we have changed our business model every 9 years based on how the industry is changing, how our clients are expecting different customers, and what that looks like for the demands. What's interesting, the last kind of change we've been going through is we noticed that working with different clients, there was a demand for more innovative and more kind of technology-driven companies that didn't really exist in the basic landscape of tech. There was also another challenge that we were going through is we were starting to lose a lot of our talent to startups like big companies like Google, Facebook, all the big tech companies, etc. So what we did as an experiment about 4 years ago was look at creating our own ventures program. And what that enabled us to do is actually find 10 companies out there. We did it on a theme which was based on sport at the time, and allowed us to really look at how do we find really good, innovative startups that kind of need that connection into clients. But also for us as an agency, we looked at the way for us to be able to use those companies into the day-to-day of our work. And we've actually grown that now. So we've done 14 ventures programs over the last 4 years. We have about 200 companies in our kind of mix. And what's interesting in that model is we, as part of that process, we actually attain equity. So we have a small stake in what that looks like. But the way the program works is we offer a mentorship, but we also offer services for those clients. So we're able to start to think about how do we offer branding for them, or how do we offer the right experience design, or product design, etc. And that mix changes as we go, and it's something that is successful, but it hasn't completely changed our model. It hasn't completely changed how we address client needs. But what it's done is it's augmented our business and enabled us to look ahead to where clients are demanding different expectations, but also to ensure that we have that right mix portfolio within our.
And Joe, just a quick question, right? So obviously RGA is big, right? Do you think that creating a venturing approach is something that could be executed at a smaller scale as well? Do you think you need to scale it right to make a success of it?
I think you can start it, yeah. So we launched a UK version of it last year, based on IoT. For me, it's based on how do you have the right equity partnerships. We also partner with bigger startup ventures like Metro accelerators as well. So you have to build that connection. You need funding, obviously, to work with venture companies, but I think it's about venturing the right partnerships, choosing a theme and a direction that suits your business. And having that ability to augment what that looks like.
So what I'm hearing from you is you really need to be like a networked business to make a venturing piece work for you, right? Because you need to be connected to funders, startups.
Yeah, you need a mentor network for those startups. You need a whole lot of different ingredients, but yeah, it's possible if you have the right network and also you have the right clients that want to drive that and be part of it as well.
Very good. Dan, can an agency commercialise its own product whilst still looking after the agency business?
Good question. Firstly, thanks for stealing my microphone. Short Yorkshire bloke, so I probably wouldn't have heard or seen anything like this. But I think just to sort of set from Calmarama's perspective, I run jointly the Creative Products Division, which is just about 85 people who design and build products for our clients, none of which we build for ourselves. They're not proprietary, therefore, on behalf of our clients. But I think the question I always think is, firstly, are you capable, do you have the capabilities to build products? And that's one thing, if you can do that, great. But secondly, do you think you have the right to build your own products? And I think that's where I've had a lot of experience, quite humbling experiences, failing, building products for companies that I've worked for. And I think the challenge is are you confident that you can market and monetize that? Do you have the ability to do that beyond just building something that's a great experience? And I think where I've seen it fall down is where agencies you're a digital agency that's building a CMS solution or an analytics platform that actually can complement the services that you sell, then that can work. Where I've seen companies fall down is where they come up with a great idea, overestimate the demand for that product, and then they overinvest in that. And especially if you're a small to medium size agency, that can really cripple you. So I think where we've touched on building our own products has been when we've done things for example, for a lot of video on demand clients where they would actually like to come to us and say, can you build us this video on demand platform? We go, yes, it's going to cost this much, and we go, we don't have that. So you say, okay, great. Well, what we can do is we can build something where it costs you half the price for us to do it, but we will retain some of the IP and we will use that as almost a component framework for us to use as a product that we then sell to other.
So it's a bit more like an accelerator or a framework, if you like.
Yeah.
Half and half almost.
That's it. I think you either do something where you de-risk, where you venture, and you actually rely on brands and other services to actually come together to be able to monetize, market and build, or you do something that is effectively accelerating or providing a platform product that you can then resell and build and customize on.
Next time, we'll come back to that, I think. So, Sid, you do run a product business and an agency. You seem to be defying the odds. What is your secret?
Good morning and thank you, Tarek. Thanks for having me here today. I think the secret, if you will, because as Dan was saying, going off and doing something you don't really know anything about, is exactly what I did actually, and went into product manufacture and prototyping and building physical products, which is also tied into an app and things you can interact with it. But yeah, I had not a clue. And in hindsight, would I still have done it? Probably yes, because we've turned the corner and we've made it work. But it was 7 years. It was listening to people I respect, like Tarek on a ski trip, and he was going, "Why do you need that?" And I go, "No, it's going to work." And having the determination to make it succeed is a real core of the secret of success in that. I think it depends on your end game, I think is the answer actually, because we're in a very fortunate position as agents and founders or working in the agency world, because we are always building other products and other businesses, having to understand other products and businesses. My other friends who actually have proper jobs, who are running businesses making a widget, they can spend 10 years doing that and they get really bored. And we don't, we're lucky. And so we get a chance to try other businesses, other products, and also understanding our end game. So I don't want to sell a clock. We were a Princess Trust startup 21 years ago, and I realised that actually every business that we get involved with needs an MVP or a lovable product as well, and marketing and branding. So we can actually spawn off other businesses. So there's actually 5 businesses I'm involved with now. Swipe Station being one of them. We managed to get some funding last year through a seeds campaign, got 600 grand to go and scale that. But it's figuring out the problem we were solving along the way. There are some other interesting parts that are around it. When we are starting going into totally unknown territory, the understanding I now have with someone who's going to patents, for instance, or going through the prototyping process, I have a lot of understanding and empathy I can share with them around that experience. There's one other thing also to share. Has anyone ever heard of Patent Box before? No, neither have I. No. So a lot of people know about SEIS and EIS funding, which is great. Everyone should, if you don't know about it, you should do. And R&D tax credits, of course. But Patent Box is an interesting one. If your company has a patent, then you can only pay 10% corporation tax. And I say it now because it's a useful thing to start learning about early. Because if you go too far down the road and everything's out there, it may be more difficult to patent. So it's definitely worth looking into that as a top tip.
Thank you, Sid. So I'm meant to be a facilitator and not a panellist, but I thought I would share just a touch, because actually we've been through the motions. We actually at one point we had a product which we knew was going to be amazing. It was like a digital mortgage broker about 8 years ago, and we built it, and the mortgage industry loved it. But of course, commercialising a product like that, it couldn't be further away from running an agency business, especially an agency business that's scaling and growing. So we kind of shelved it. And then actually what we started doing was on a couple of our clients, especially those sort of well-funded startup clients, we took stakes, we took sweat equity, we were venturing, if you like, and many of those have become really quite successful. The equity investments sort of really paid off. But I think the thing that's quite interesting for many of us who are sort of on the agency side is the point I think that I'd really like us to sort of unpack a bit more, is that in reality there's a big continuum here of different ways you can start shifting the business model and playing, from accelerators to sweat equity to venturing to doing it on the side to doing a complete transformation to a product business. But I think the point Sid just made is really interesting, is that actually there is an awful lot of support to take you through that continuum wherever you decide to go, because whether it is R&D tax credits or whether it is patent box or SEIS and EIS, there's actually quite a lot out there to make this quite interesting. Is that right?
Yeah, good. I see what you did there. So yeah, I think the support is phenomenal, and actually starting a business is incredibly easy. Making it successful is the difficult thing, and I think when we're looking at great ideas, people ask what's most important, is it the great idea or is it the execution? I think the answer to that is it depends how difficult it is to execute. And actually I'm interested in great ideas which are difficult to execute. They're easy to execute, anyone can do it, and that's much less fun than someone else can overtake you. But if it's a great idea, it's difficult to execute, you can get involved through your marketing rate, your experience and your tenacity and determination behind it, make success of it, and it's incredibly fulfilling.
Great. So let's shift the conversation to a different gear. So I'm interested to hear how important you think it is moving beyond the pure service model might be in the mind's eye of customers and buyers of brands. Is it seen as a distraction? Is it seen as a positive attribute? Is it the future of the agency model? Where do we think we're going? What do you think brands and clients are going to expect? And Jen, I'd like to start with you, please.
Sure. I do think it is an expectation from clients. They want to see companies or partners that they work with as an agencies to be able to bring new innovation to the table. And that's what I see when we're talking to clients. When we talk about ventures, they get excited. They look at the network of smaller companies, they get excited about the nimbleness and their quickness to actually deliver and execute. So for me that becomes really important in how we start to bring that model into the forefront. But it also does need to be somewhat separate, and we do have our ventures as a separate arm. It's got its own P&L, it runs its own kind of operation within, and I think that's really important. You have to, especially when you're moving into new products where you can burn money very quickly, you have to kind of time box the effort of resources that are being spent on that work, how that's being across the business. Because the reality is people get excited by it. Like I see a lot of young talent get super excited by a new startup. They spend their own time developing brands or designing the product, etc. So yeah, it's about making sure that the teams stay focused. You are able to create the right salaries to make money, but I do think it does need to be and the way it's worked for us, it needs to be somewhat of a separate entity that runs its own unique program, but it is separated from the business as well.
So Alex, just to ask you the same question, keen to understand, particularly from your perspective, why it was an all-in sort of choice.
I mean, ours is interesting in that we actually retained some of our agency services behind the scenes as professional services for ContentCal. And one thing I would say is that when you flip your brand and your positioning into a software-led business and you're on that journey, so all of a sudden, and you want to still sell professional services, it's really hard because people, when they engage with you in the first instance, they see you as a software company. Even if you literally bring them into your office and show them you have a mini professional services team, so we still run Facebook advertising, Twitter advertising, paid media and social for certain clients, for example. And actually growing that and explaining our proposition behind that, which is called ContentCal Boost, is actually really tough because they go, there's a gazillion other people that do this and you're not an agency anymore, you're a product business. Or they go, you sold me a piece of software, just leave me alone now. So, and we actually want to grow it, we want to still maintain a level of dialogue and expertise within our industry because we can't innovate in our product otherwise. If we're not doing some of the doing still, we can't build a good product to service those things and scale it from there. So we have this reverse challenge now, which is mind-blowing, but it is what it is. But the reason I went all in is because it's just so much more scalable, and we sell to SMEs, so we have clients, onboarding every single day. We get 10 customers or something like that on average every single day. We have 100 people sign up to ContentCal in our freemium model every day. So we still get the excitement of, it's a new business, understanding what they do. Implementing ContentCal can be done in lots of different ways, so learning that experience of how you're implementing software into a company. And for me, selfishly, it was a personal decision. It was, okay, I've done an agency for 3.5 years, and actually I wanted to build a technology business. So I was like, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to find my way through it. But it was a huge decision which I didn't take lightly. But I honestly underestimated the challenges of doing it properly, definitely.
Dan, what do clients want?
So I think for us it's slightly different. The clients that we work with, the brands that we work with, they see themselves as products now. They've been digitised so much, they are actual digital breathing products themselves now. And I think what they look to for us isn't necessarily for us to come and sell them our own products, is to differentiate theirs. So I think where we go now is, the risks that I think product companies have or brands have that are products is both the differentiation. One is when they come to agencies, you kind of get soaked up in collaboration. We're so closely aligned with the services we offer in terms of UX, software development, etc., that we just merge into their own product offering. So that's a risk for us, but I think the risk that they have is that the product development process is so sophisticated now that actually people just have these self-fulfilling products. It's just the low-hanging fruit that you deliver the next thing that was mentioned in the App Store reviews, you deliver the next thing that came out with the latest iOS release. And I think for us clients, we want to see how we can help them evolve their products through creativity, so that we can not just do the old Henry Ford classic of, if I ask people what they want faster horses, not cars. Actually, we don't want to keep building faster horses. What we want to do is use creativity and data and insight to say, how do we shift your product out of just that incremental race that you're in with everybody else. So for us, brands want differentiation for their products. So we're focusing more on that side of things and how we help them differentiate their own products rather than actually taking to them services of our own.
Thanks, Dan. And Sid, what has Swipe Station done for Clock in the mind's eye of the clients?
Good question. One of the things that agencies or clients are looking to agencies for, they say we want you to be creative, and I think we can say we're creative as much as we want, but show me speaks to it's a much better picture. And I think that's when people see that we've built and set up a separate business, another product that we've then made successful and marketed successful, they have a totally different view on us, and they go, okay, you can actually do it. So don't tell me, show me. And I think it's a really key part. And one sort of final, are we doing final thoughts on this?
Go.
So one final thought that did occur to me as well when looking at setting up a separate business and understanding your own game. I think one of the big challenges for me was also the tricky second album. And if you set up a business and you've done it successfully for so long, like 3.5 years, and you decide to you get bored really quickly, but what do you do next? And I think that's a real challenge for many agency founders and actually business owners as well. So basically what I realised I'm trying to do is writing the second, third, fourth and fifth album whilst touring with the first one, to stretch the analogy a little bit. And that gives me this confidence and security around having a successful business backing it, but also the liberty to be able to be adventurous and try new ideas out, with some security still behind.
Why don't we actually do a little final thoughts wrap up, and then we'll open to the floor and see where the conversation takes us. So, Alec?
So I think my final thoughts are just, if you're thinking about doing a switch or setting a separate business or whatever it may be, just speak to as many people as possible that you respect and think their ideas are valid or advice or whatever to what you're going to do before you do it. I'm a character, for example, who does things and then has to fix it afterwards because that's just the way my brain works, which I wouldn't recommend. And if I was doing anything like this ever again, I would validate my idea and my concept of whatever I want to do as much as possible, rather than just jumping in thinking I'll fix it later kind of thing. because I think it can make, if you decide to make the leap with all the information up front, whatever mechanic you do it under, you will be successful faster, basically.
My final thoughts are, I think we should be looking at the future where we do augment into products, whether it's our own or whether we're partnering into others. And for me, that brings satisfaction to staff. It helps you partner with clients in true partnerships. And also just enables fresh thinking and fresh injection of energy into your business, which I think is really important. So ventures or doing your own product, it has to suit your business, but I do believe that we should be thinking beyond just servicing and having a stake in our own products moving forward.
So Jake, can we just build on that? So has it helped RGA create a more diverse sort of workforce, ecosystem, mindset? What's it done?
Yeah, all of those things. So it's opened us up to new technology partners, which mean we have a diverse set of skills we can bring to clients. But what I've personally seen is the talent. It is making that injection of energy of a brand new startup come in, allowing, I've seen teams build brands in a week, and it's just like the energy that comes with a startup, the energy that ingests into day-to-day teams is super valuable, and you can't buy that. So yeah, I think it's diversity of thinking is something that it definitely brings to how we operate.
Thanks. Dan?
Yeah, I suppose for me, I think if you're thinking about developing products, it's around, you have to have that right product mentality, and Sid made the point about looking ahead of the fourth, fifth album. That's what developing products is about. It's about having that long-term view of a roadmap and being able to flex that a little bit. But it isn't just about one iteration or one release. It's about being able to know how you're going to develop this, how you're going to get return on that investment, and doing it in a way that doesn't derail what the essence of your skills and services are about, particularly if you're going to try sell services alongside that product, to make sure that you've got that proximity that actually you can do those as a complementary sort of set of methods.
Great. Well, look, why don't we open up for some questions from the floor? I hope there are some, otherwise we'll be talking. Good stuff. Yes.
Hi, thank you very much, everyone. Tom Hall from Potato Brothers. I've got two mini questions. So, what accelerator did you go on, and which other ones did you consider? And then for Jen, do you have a fixed equity stake that you take in the ventures? And if so, what?
So I did one called the Accelerator Academy, which is not a well-known one, just so you know. I mean, it's really, anyone I've mentioned that to doesn't know what it is, actually, funnily enough. But that was introduced to me via one of our investors, and it's run by a guy called Ian Merricks. And it was actually incredible, to be honest. We paid £600 up front to do it because it's subsidised by partners, effectively. And their model is you pay that fee, which is a nominal fee. They take 2.5% options in your business, and your mentor also takes 2.5% options, which for me was good because actually those options are worth nothing at the time. They're now worth quite a lot, but they're worth nothing at the time. And it's a very common model for when you get to VCs that they look at it and they don't go, oh my God, what the hell's that? They know what an accelerator is and an option scheme behind that. So that was a good one. I looked at a lot in London, actually. And what I didn't like about most of the others is they're very elitist. So I just didn't like the atmosphere behind what they were trying to do. I also didn't like the concept of ones that gave you 20 grand or 25 grand and incubated you, because I think it depends on your personality traits and what you were like. But I already had a business and I already sort of felt like I knew how to do that bit. So I didn't want to go and set up ContentCal, move my agency into someone else's environment. So it just depends on what you're doing and what stage you're at. But I couldn't recommend doing Accelerator more if you're going to do a startup-led business, which will need funding and requires some technology, effectively.
So we have early stage startups as one of our ventures. Equity stake is a very small percent, but it's negotiated depending on what that company is and what that startup looks like. But it's in the low percent element. It just depends. But we also give them offering moving forward into ongoing mentors and client relationships. So it's very hard to. The value exchange depends and is different depending on startup, but it's a couple percent.
Great. Are there any more questions? Ooh, you're making this difficult. I will keep talking with these guys then for a little bit. So, I think we talked about, I guess, this sort of continuum, if you like. It's almost degrees of separation with doing this. It's like, and it's the more separated it becomes, almost the more risky it kind of becomes. And I just wanted to ask, in terms of accelerators and this sort of half-in approach, is this something that you guys have experienced, for example, at RGA or at Clock? It sounds like you have at Camerama, but is that also an approach that you pursue at RGA?
So, yeah, I think having that portfolio of startups enables us to have it very focused. But I think the thing is, it's a program for us. It's evolved over many years to be what it is, and it's also we have largest partnerships. So we've worked with labs, we've worked with Metro, we've worked with big areas in that space. So it's a balance between where we see what that value will look like for us at that time, and how that venture program actually fits in within.
Just to build on that, so it's interesting. If I'd have met you 4 years ago, I would have jumped at the chance of building my business within an agency, knowing that I'd have an environment. If I was really early stage, I'd be looked after. There'd be client access, there'd be expertise, UX, UI. Exactly. Yeah, that was important. Yeah. But one of the interesting things I've now known about corporate ventures or agency style ventures, or believe anyway, is that the lack of awareness basically of them for potential entrepreneurs is very low. So are you actively pursuing opportunities, or do you wait for them to sort of stumble in for everyone, I suppose? Is it something you guys want to, as an agency, do more of, and therefore find them and build a bit of a marketing thing around it, create events? Because there's a bazillion entrepreneurs out there that would love it, but I'd be fascinated to know whether it's just wait for the good ones, or build a bit of a pipeline around it.
Yeah, so they are based on a theme. So if we take the London, we've done IoT for a couple of years now. And the way it works is there's like a 6-month application process that goes with it. And we basically spend 6 months kind of vetting and talking to and making sure that those startups are the right ones. So it's a combination of, does it work for us and does it work for them? Obviously, that's how all of them work. But it is a elongated process, and I think given that it's growing to so many startups now, there are events that we have around it. Like we were at Cannes last year, there was a female startup initiative that we did as part of that. So we are looking at what that right marketing and network opportunity is. But yeah, it's a long process. It's not something that we just do, let's do IoT, let's fund tomorrow. It's a very long, making sure that it works for everyone exercise.
From our point of view, I think we're at a point now where we're a couple of years into the Accenture interactive acquisition, so we've got a bit more of a luxury to be able to invest in certain clients or projects that we think have some longevity. So it's not always us working with startups. It may be, for example, we do a lot of work with Guide Dogs for the Blind, and it's looking at how do we start to build out products that can change behaviour, which, to be fair, they wouldn't have the budget or the immediate budget to invest in, but we can now invest in those to try and make something that we think has real sort of gravitas or real potential to change culture and behavioural shift. So we do a lot more things like that, but I think we still we don't have a designated programme that allows us to work with startups, but I think there's more of an ambition now and more headspace for us, given the backing of the Accenture piece, that we can actually start to look at those things.
And Dan, whilst we've got you, I think you made a point which was fundamentally, perhaps before you think about how you work your way through this set of options and different approaches, actually starting with the fundamental sort of capability around product development and building that product development mindset and mentality into the business. It sounds like it's a prerequisite starting base. Would you mind sharing with us what you think the fundamentals are of that? How do you know you're there?
Yeah, well, I think if I look at the trajectory we went on, we started off as a digital agency, a nice agency that was acquired by Camerama, and we made a conscious shift about 6 years ago to become a product capability, mainly because clients have become digital, their brands have become digital, and they were sort of living things. But the thing that drove success for us as a product capability wasn't great agile software development. We did that, but a lot of people do. It wasn't great UX or technology. What actually enabled us to do it was mirroring. It was like empathising with our clients. We actually made a shift to get rid of a client services team. Not literally, we didn't fire them all. We actually made them into a product function. They actually had to have that value and be able to match the clients. And where we won business was by driving iterative value in everything we did, every bit of effort, every release, and actually helping them define a roadmap to achieve their vision. So that was the key for us, was sort of the empathy with clients and their product businesses.
Cool. Are there any other questions from the audience? Is anybody got anything they want to ask? Very good. Okay, good.
Thank you. Hey, I'm Anthony from YLD. I mostly look after ventures and building our businesses. And this is mostly a question for Jen. Sid, you did give us a little bit of a tidbit on how you're identifying interesting opportunities for you guys to go after, but it's a really big challenge for agencies to understand what is the best hunting that we can do, how can we go after this venture. And Jen, it seems like you guys are going through the process of acquiring existing companies and building something that becomes successful. And Alex, it seems like you've been doing this sort of from your own foundational level inside the company, which is awesome. But I think the challenge is really interesting from Jen's side. It's like, how do you identify those organisations that are going to be most successful inside your company?
Yeah, what works for joint ventures is there's a theme or there's a partner, and we identify that based on future clients or future opportunities. So we look at, what's the white space out there. We've done ventures in sports because we have a lot of sporting clients. Nike, we've done an LA Dodgers startup or ventures program. We've done, we did one with Westfield, which is the future of e-commerce. We're looking at doing a few in regards to how do we develop other services. So it's all around finding an area that's interesting for us as a business, looking to the future almost of what's going to be relevant, and then focusing that, basically it's a 12-month program, but focusing all of that on, okay, how do we make sure we find the right businesses to make that work? But yeah, I definitely think focusing on a theme matters, and focusing on a theme that is relevant to the clients that you have already. And we're seeing the offices change, so that London has done 2 IoT ventures now, and that's, there's a lot of IT in London, and it kind of makes sense. You have the pool of talent around, and the also the startups that exist in that space. So yeah, keeping it focused, but also thinking broader. Where's the industry going? Where are our clients moving to? What are they asking for? Because quite often they're asking for services, and when you start to connect all that data together, you can actually go, okay, well, it makes sense to do it in this.
And Jane, do you think we should, when looking for ventures, do you think we should be sticking to what we know, because that's where we can add the most value in the same way that we did ours, or do you think actually we add the most value when we're outside of our comfort zone?
I think it should be something that will augment your business. So it can't be too far outside of your comfort zone that it's not relevant. But it's about making sure, are we missing something that we need? Is it marketing services? Is it some kind of cloud-based technology? Like, what is it that really is going to help our business and the clients that we have and are going for, versus something that's completely different that then takes away focus from you as an agency and a base company.
And I guess the same question for you, how did Clock make Swipe Station successful? Because I assume there was some kind of relationship there of some description.
Sheer bloody-mindedness and determination. It was really, really difficult. 7 years before we figured out the problem we were solving, actually. And once we realised the problem we were solving, then we could make it work. I don't think there's a typical sort of product cycle there, and it was unique to the product that we developed. I just want to touch on something there that we were talking about, finding the right partners. One of there's an agency called The Garage, and John Hegarty basically identifying the assets that they have and they can leverage. One of the things he does is he says, look, I've got access to media and media spend. So if you've got a public-facing product and you want to make it big and public very quickly, we can help you. And they had that access to that. So they were investors in Simba, and no one knows Simba have shitloads of adverts and TV and internet advertising, which they were able to negotiate for considerably less. Which is an interesting angle on it. So they're basically saying, look, we've got media spend, we can negotiate. But okay, that's quite a nice way of doing it, as long as you've got a customer-facing product that needs picking up quickly.
Oh, thank you. There was a question.
Peninka from Dina. Quick question, Alex. You touched on the culture issue that you had from moving from agency to a product, and you know that you had some issues around that. In hindsight, how would you approach that differently now, knowing what those issues sort of arise?
In hindsight, I probably would have tried to find someone to run the agency and given them a decent stake in it who wanted to do it, and I think that would have been really difficult, by the way. I think finding someone to take over your baby when it's still growing is pretty hard. But I would have definitely gone down that route, or I would have built the agency up and sold it. I mean, we actually got an acquisition offer for our agency really early on, because we were growing quite quickly, but I decided to decline it because we'd started this merger process and all that stuff. So I would either try very hard to find someone to take it over and run it and keep my stake, or I would have positioned it for sale and sold it and then gone all into the product stuff. I think where I was at in my sort of journey, just doing both would have been complete insanity. I think it'd probably be achievable once you hit a certain size, but at the stage we were at, I just couldn't do both. There was no chance. So.
Thank you. Lawrence Parks from Rufus Leonard. I was interested, obviously you've got very different ways of tackling this shift to product. I was going to ask kind of what are the benefits of doing so, but you've all hinted at it, so I'm going to ask a more specific question. How do you quantify success in your product activities? And this is for each of you.
How much money do we make, if I'll be brutally honest? So, I mean, this is the thing. When you're in the early stages of doing a product from a startup point of view, from someone who wants to do it from scratch, the really early stages of defining a good product is about product market fit. You know, can you get sign-ups? Can you get people to use it? Onboarding, engagement, etc., etc. So we have a number of product statistics that are about the likeliness of someone signing up, actually using it, likeliness to churn, etc., etc. They are critical, to be fair. And then we also have a number of metrics that we measure around feature requests, and we only build, our product director, the guy who actually looks after the building of the product, will only let certain features be built if they reach a certain peak. And that's been very successful because people ask for stuff that they don't need and will never buy, and actually being able to define that loads of people have said that, so you've got to build it but you can't sell it, you've got to just include it in part of your existing pricing is really important. And then building products that you can actually build up and then commercialise, like I said, cross-sell, upsell, whatever it may be, is also important. So there is a huge set of product metrics you have to get your head around. But for me now, I've had to learn actually making money is the thing. You know, customer acquisition costs, lifetime customer value, what pricing can we get away with, what is the value that it delivers internally to the client to help define pricing. So there's quite a few, but ultimately, me as the top of the company now, I've had to learn that it's the money bit which is the most important. Yes.
The second part of the question is why bother the product and what interesting in the various clearly their decision.
Yeah, I mean, for us it's more of a longer term game. Some of these companies we won't make any money from ever, that's fine. But success looks like, have they got to their next series of funding? Have we got them there? Or it looks like, have we won an award for some of the innovative work we've done with our clients? And it also means, have we brought in a new client because they're interested in what this looks like? So there's lots of measures. It's not as black and white as, it's a product that makes money, it's got an evolution. It's all around the periphery that goes with it that I feel that is, what makes it successful for us as a program, and we're still doing it, so it's not stopping. So it's definitely working as an augmentation to our business.
Yeah, I think from our part there's probably two sides to it. One being in selling product development services. The measures for that are generally aligned to clients in terms of the sort of KPIs that we have, the typical analytic measures you put in there, sales measures. But ultimately, the measure of success for us selling those services is the longevity of the relationship we have and how much of a journey we go on with that client. I see us developing our own products in the future, and I think, as I mentioned before, for us, when we do that, it will be most likely around things that can effectively enable us, whether it is building platforms that are almost a startup point for video on demand or commerce platforms, etc. And then the measure of success for that will be how many more clients we can reach. So that's how it works for us.
Thanks, Rob. So I'm going to be slightly different here because actually I think
surprise.
Yes. Right. So the wonderful Phil Jones, and a number of people say to Phil and I over the years, they've said you could be more successful more quickly if you've been a bit more ruthless. And our response is, well, that depends on your definition of success, doesn't it? And the challenge is, I get why you're coming from that place, Alex, and one of the challenges is because you have one product, if it doesn't make money, you're fucked. You know? So you have to have that focus, which is one of the reasons I chose to have a slightly broader approach, and I'm fortunate to be able to do that. Actually, I'm very lucky to have a great team who run the agency now, so I'm not really involved with it. And so I have that luxury to be able to say, okay, let's not just be money focused. But it's not an easy one, and I get why you say that. So I know it sounds a little bit hippie, but building, understanding what success is for you personally and as an organisation is really important. And with all this, if success is just money, it often does end up being quite hollow. And I'm sure Alex, well, I know he runs his business and the way he cares about his team, that's not the only focus that they have. But if you do end up with a product-only business, then that is going to be one of the major factors for your measurement of success, and be ready for that if that's what you're going to do.
Thanks.
More questions?
We're from Vivida, and we look at products for emerging technologies such as virtual reality. My question for each is looking ahead to 2019, what are you looking forward to most?
What are we looking forward to most? I was going to say, a break, yeah, exactly, with the end of the year and surviving. What am I looking forward to? Do you know what? It's an exciting time. I think the amount of stuff that's going on in the world at the moment, which is a bit depressing, and all the rest of it, I'm actually quietly optimistic about what's happening. I think if you're working in our industry, there has never been more of an exciting time to either start or join a company. There's so many exciting jobs, businesses, concepts. There's so much money out there to start something if you want to. I think with all the adversity that goes on in the world and the Brexit, who cares? If you can take the chance and just do something that you really love, and that sounds a bit cringeworthy, but go and find it. It's all out there. You just got to go for it. So I'm actually quite optimistic about what's happening. I don't have an exact answer for what I'm most looking forward to this year, but I think there's a huge amount of opportunity for anyone who wants to go and find it, basically. Looking forward to being optimistic. Love it. See.
I was going to say exactly the same thing, to be honest. I feel very lucky in my position that I've crafted over the years. I'm not a principal on any of the businesses that I'm involved with, so I'm not a bottleneck, and so I'm always at work and never at work. I get to do pretty much what I want most of the time, and I feel very fortunate for that. And I really don't take that for granted. But Alex is right. There are so many things that are possible in the next 24 months, which there's a lot of uncertainty. But in that time, inventive, creative brains like ours, we can make some cool shit happen, and encourage you to do so.
Dan?
Yeah, I think from a Camerama perspective, I think we're probably better set than we ever have been to really do some creative work. I think we've got a lot of resources at our disposal now, and I kind of think for us the shackles are off a little bit in terms of all the things that we're able to bring together. So I think we've got a bigger remit than ever to create some different experiences that can sort of shift culture a bit. So it's a bit of a breath of fresh air for me compared to the slog that I've been through.
Nice. Jen?
I always look forward to looking back on that year and just looking at all the amazing things you've created, what that looks like for your clients, what that looks like for your teams, and what that looks like for you personally yourself. So every year is different. That's why I'm in this industry. I think it's, for me, it's like, how do we start to embrace new technology? We are seeing a lot more, augmented, mixed reality, what that starts to look like in the space of retail, what that looks like in the space of digital and technology, I think is interesting, and we've been talking about it for the last couple of years, but there's an element, I think, this year that will pick up a lot, and just seeing how people embrace that technology and how we work in digital and how we live, I think is something interesting to look forward to.
Thanks. So let's wrap up. I think what I've taken away from this conversation is, one, that actually the journey towards product is a wholesome journey for anyone. Two, you can do it at any scale by the sound of things, and there are ways of significantly reducing the cost, and you've got to be clear about what you're in it for and what success looks like from the outset. Three, that you need to have a true product development mentality and capability in order to succeed. I think four is also sort of just being clear on what your strategy for separation is and how that plays out, and use some very good. So I wish I'd like you all to join me, I guess, to thank the panel for their excellent input. Around and network a little bit, and we'll see you soon. Cheers.